G'day, Professor Joseph Drew. Those of you that don't know me, I'm Professor of Local Government Economics and the author of 85 peer-reviewed works. And in this video, I'm going to give you what I have learnt over the last decade or so about getting academic work published. The first thing I want to get across to you is that publications don't happen by accident. There's far too many people that sit down, start writing a paper, not thinking about whether there's a market for the paper, what journal they might submit it to, what the current state of debate is, or any of those things, not being strategic at all, and then get disappointed when they can't get the paper published. You must be strategic. Writing and getting papers accepted is an art. Just like rhetoric, Aristotle said it was an art. Just like the great William Riker said about heristhetic. And you'll see elements of both of those things as I go through my top tips. Now, the number one thing you need to do is plan the paper. So many papers I read look like they haven't been planned. That's because they haven't. If you want it all to tie together and constantly be moving around constant themes and all come to a nice circle at the end, you've got to sit down and plan it. And this is a plan from a very recent paper I did with my good colleagues, Youngji Kim and Diego Ferreira and Masato Miyazaki. It's under review at present, so at least I've got that far. But it shows you the level of planning. This is only stage one plan. There's one bubble for each section. Before I write each section, I'll actually expand that bubble on a separate piece of paper. So I put a lot of effort into planning. There's a whole video about it, but if you're not putting as much time into planning as you are writing, you're doing yourself a disservice and you're lowering your chances of getting published. You need to write to your audience. Who's going to be reading this thing? Is it for economists? Is it for general public administration scholars? Is it for other local government scholars? If you don't know your audience, then you're not going to pitch things appropriately. You're not going to connect into current debates and current controversies appropriately. But you also need to know the audience that is your journal. There's no point writing super complicated empirical work for a journal like AJPA, which I love. I'm on the editorial board of it. It's Australia's best journal. But they don't do heavy-duty empirical work. So there's no point writing a heavy-duty empirical paper for them. You need to think about what journal you're targeting and make sure that you got the right mix of theory and empirical work for that particular journal. So some journals are theory heavy, empirical light. Some journals are very empirical heavy, theory light. Some are a little bit of both. You need to know which journal it is. How do you find this out? Download some of the recent papers, not old ones, recent papers from the journal and find out what sort of stuff's getting published, because it changes when you get changes of editors too. You need to be aware of that. What suited a journal 2 years ago may not suit them now if they've got a different desk editor. You've got to write for broad appeal. Now, clearly Australian local government is the most important thing on the scholarly radar, but no one else in the world's going to think that. And there's no point me banging on and on and on about Australian local government to an international journal, because it's going to get rejected before it even gets sent out to review. In fact, I hide the fact that I'm writing from Australia until at least section 3, by which time I've got them hooked and that they're prepared to read past the fact that I'm Australian and I'm writing about an Australian case, prepared to put their biases and their prejudices aside because I've got them hooked on a good story. If you're from a little country like me, or a country that's not very popular, you're going to have to do the same thing. Now, notably, if you're American or English, bang on and on and on about America and England, because nothing is ever too American or too English. But for my friends in Japan and Korea and myself, we're constantly being told that our paper is too Australian, too Korean, too Japanese. But as I say, if you're a Pommy or a Yank, you just go for it. Follow your abstract recipe. You know, a lot of the time the desk editors, all they're going to do is read the abstract. They're not going to get any further. If your abstract's rubbish, you're not going to get past the desk. Now, I have a brilliant little recipe I've developed over the last decade and a bit, and I've got a video about that. But basically, what you're doing, why it's important, what you found, what's the public policy implication. So what? That's my little playbook I play by. And you change it a little bit. You don't want to be stiff and rigid and looking like you're writing to a recipe, but it's those essential things you want to tell a person to basically what you're saying is why you should bother reading further, why you should bother reading beyond the abstract, because if you can't get that, you're never even going to get out for review. As I say, a lot of papers, I suspect, they only ever get the abstract read. Perhaps some even only ever get the title read. You've got to put the effort in at the point that the desk editor is making decisions. Now, this point was brought out to me. I was working with a chief editor of one of my favorite journals once, and one of the idiot reviewers had no idea what I was talking about, despite the fact that I said it twice and I went off on a little rant about it. But she came back to me and she really made me think. She said, we editors were talking about this the other day, and we've decided that if they haven't got it, it's the author's fault, not the reviewer's fault. Now, whether you like that or not, that's the way editors are thinking. So my thing is, I repeat several times what this paper's about. I say it in the abstract, I say it in the penultimate paragraph, and the first sentence of the last paragraph of the first section always repeats it in one sentence. And I keep saying it throughout the paper so that they finally understand what I'm going on about. Because if they don't, they're just going to reject you, and they might be wrong, and maybe they don't have good English comprehension or whatever. But you know what? If you get rejected, it doesn't really matter. So the object of this game is to get accepted. I don't think a lot of academics realize when they're writing a paper, they're trying to write to get it accepted. You've got to be strategic. These people need to be told things multiple times. Well, then you've just got to go and play the game. Look, I have an important request. This is done in my own time. It's something I do as a community service. I was so lucky to be mentored by some of the truly greats when I started off, and I'm trying to give back to people before I retire and die or whatever's going to happen. Now, for this to be a success, this channel to be a success, I need each one of you to help me. I need you to subscribe. I need you to give, that tells me to bother making more videos. I need you to give me the thumbs up. That tells me it's a topic that you appreciated. And I need you to send this video to 3 other people that might get some benefit from it, and encourage them to subscribe and send it on to others. If we can get this message out, everyone gets helped. That's all I want to do, is help people. I can't help people without your help. You need to signal. Now, there's 2 really important ways to signal. One is when you're preparing a paper for a journal, you'll find out that they've all got particular ways of doing the citation. Some have commas between the name and the date, some have a comma and then P dot for the page number, some use a colon, some use a semicolon, whatever. Now, that drives most academics crazy, as does the way they set out the reference list. Is different for every journal. But you know what you're doing? When you sit down and you change everything and waste that 2 hours before you submit, you're signaling to the desk editor that I could be bothered spending a couple of hours to change my paper so it accords with your typing standards, and you should be bothered to read at least my abstract to decide if you're going to send it out to review. It's a signal. Now, I know a lot of journals will say now you don't have to do that. I do it anyway. You know, you invested 2 weeks writing a paper or more, the least you can do is invest 2 hours and get it set up in this according to the standards of that journal, which will increase your opportunity of getting past the desk, getting sent out to review. You're signaling. Now, that's really important at the desk editor stage. I don't think reviewers care that much about how you set out the citations and references, but the desk editor does, and you've got to get past them first. Now, the other way you signal, and I've got a picture there of my former boss, mentor, and good friend, the great Brian Dollery. I was lucky enough to get mentored by someone that's written 500 odd papers. That's just amazing. Most people never get these opportunities. I was so lucky, and this is why I do these videos, to return some of that bounty back to everyone else. But you'll see these great writers, the ones that get high publishers and the good journals, they signal to everyone who they are. Yeah, I know it's supposed to be a blind peer-reviewed process, but it's not. That's the truth of the matter. I can tell you what paper Brian Dollery has looked at, read, because of written because of the words he uses. You use the word inter alia and apostate and words like that that other people don't use. Same with Rhys Andrews. I can pick his writing a mile away. Mike Core, lots of co-authors, and Richard Fick is the same. You can tell by their writing who they are. They use certain words, certain sentence structures, certain ways of outlining the remainder of the paper, etc., etc. And they signal to tell people who they are and that they are quality people and their paper should get accepted. Well, you should signal too. Now, one of the things I did once was rather cheeky. I actually copied the signaling device of one of these big name people. And for the next 5 papers or so I sent out to really top ranked journals, they got accepted. First journal I sent them to. And I thought, oh, onto a winner here. But obviously the person I was copying off caught on to what I was doing and changed their style. But it does show you the power of signaling. Now, signaling won't work if you use those words that Brian Dollery uses and then you write a rubbish paper, because everyone will realise it's not him. Signaling only works if you've got a quality product. But if you do have a quality product and you'd like people to think that you are someone else, or think about the person you'd like them to think you are, maybe use some of their words. There's nothing wrong with signaling. Now, academics have lots of extraneous materials. We usually put it in there to shut reviewers up, and lots of caveats because nothing's ever clear and simple. And you can see from my endnotes here in a recent paper, where do you put them? You put them in a footnote, not in the bulk of the text. No one wants to read them. They're just there to stop reviewers from whinging and to make sure someone didn't say, oh, you said such and that's not quite right later on. So all that extraneous stuff, don't stick it in the body where people have to read through it and plow through it and it ticks them off and it bores them. Stick them in the footnotes where people can read them if they really want to. I don't imagine anyone ever reads footnotes, I don't, but maybe someone does in Journal Land. And that brings me to a really important point. When you're writing to make the reader happy, not sad, not irritated, not annoyed. So you're not using lots of big words that they have to look up dictionaries all the time, because that's going to irritate the hell out of them. You're not writing great big long sentences that take a lot of concentration power to get through. No, you're using nice, simple words, nice, short sentences. Wannabes use great big words and convoluted sentences. You go and look at a Brian Dollery paper. You'll see what I mean. Nice, simple words, nice, short sentences, one idea per paragraph. When they do use a big word, it's for effect, and it's a really big word, and it's to show you that they're smarter than you and you need a dictionary to know what they already knew, or to signal to you who they are. But now let me get on to the other point. You do not want a desk editor or reviewer to be going, so what? From the abstract onwards, you need to be telling them why this is important, and certainly in the conclusion, you need to be emphasizing why this was so important. What was the practical significance of this? If people are asking, so what? They're really asking, why on earth would we accept your paper? And use pictures. I only started doing this about 4 or 5 years ago. Pictures to demonstrate theories, to simplify theories. A lot of people have trouble reading theory, particularly if it's a page or so long. After you've finished describing it, put a nice simple picture in to illustrate your point. So the picture in front of you is from a recent paper, and I'm showing how when you amalgamate councils, they all have different optimal scales for different functions, but that presents a problem because when you amalgamate councils, you get one scale, and that's unlikely to be optimal of any of those functions. Now, you can say that in words, you can talk for ages to get that idea through to people, or you can put that picture up and they go, oh yeah, they do all have optimal scales, and oh yeah, there's not really a good scale there. It really reinforces the message. I find that you get much better strike rates at the really top journals when you put a simple picture in to illustrate your theory.